Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Coach Adam's Bikini TV. Today we are reviewing the Republic of Texas and the Patriots IFBB Pro shows over the weekend, where Lexus gets to the Olympia. She finally nails her conditioning, brings the perfect package that we all knew she could, gets back to the Olympia where she belongs, and Ashley Caldwell makes history, becoming the first pro ever in the history in all divisions to reach 40 pro wins. There's some other good stories in there. Jordan Fisher, who previously won the show in Texas just a few weeks earlier, slips all the way to 6th. Maya Astabi, who got second at the mile high, slips to 7th place at the Patriots Challenge. What happened there? India Paulina takes 2nd place at the Republic of Texas. Everyone thinking she was the favorite. An easy deal to win that show. What happened with India? What is her future? She still needs to qualify for the Olympia. We had a breakout star with Michelle Billett at the Patriots Challenge. I saw her backstage and was very impressed with her overall physique. So let's go ahead and jump into this, look at some of the battles, and get right into it. So let's start off with the meat and potatoes of this one, jump right into it. Usually we save those for last, but I want to jump right into this. What happened with India versus Lexus? How did this show go down? Was it a perfect score? What happened here, right? And it actually was a perfect score. But how was it so dominating? How was Lexus able to dominate such an established name, such a rock star in the bikini world? India is one of the most winning bikini pros ever in the history of the sport. I think she's probably in the top 5 most winning bikini competitors. So what does she need to do to get back to the Olympia? Let's go ahead and look at the breakdown of what happened with them two side by side. So the main thing that you want to look at when you're looking at India versus Lexus, Lexus has a crazy shape. That is just her structural potential of where she can go she's very close to reaching it. It is so good. There's not really much more she can do with her physique in terms of overall size, or she's going to start to get an X frame. That is how good her structure is. Super wide clavicle base, high lats. Look at that crazy V taper on her tiny waistline. For her, it was always, is she going to nail her conditioning? And if she does, it's pretty much game over for everyone. If she nails her conditioning and her fullness and her posing, those are the 3 things that she really needed to do. And she really did bring it this time. She brought 100% package, and it was just lights out. There was no one that was even close to her. It was like she was playing a different sport compared to everyone else at that show. So perfect score, she wins. But look at the conditioning that she brought this time. You could see that nice separation of the quad going all the way down the leg here. You're seeing the oblique line all the way through the back, but it's not any striations. There's no striations on the shoulders. Just a tiny kiss of them. There's not like any deep striations. You're not seeing any deep grain to her quad here. The shape is just crazy good. And that's where she beats India here. You know, India doesn't have the widest clavicle base. She doesn't have as round of shoulders as Lexus does. She doesn't have that V taper like Lexus does. And she doesn't have that natural shape that Lexus does. And that's where she gets hurt. India is a little bit more straight up and down with her overall torso and her look versus Lexus, who is very hourglass. And she's actually kind of in the middle of hourglass and X-framed with her physique. So that's really good for her. I would just say to Lexus, be careful with putting on too much muscle because your lats are so high and your angles are so extreme that you could turn into an X-frame figure-esque looking bikini pro versus being the hourglass bikini pro that they want you to be. So that's going to be the only area where she can really improve. But let's go ahead and look at the backside. It's going to be a little bit closer from the back than it is from the front. From the front, it's pretty much lights out. From the back, it's a little bit closer. So looking at Lexus and looking at India, I will say India from the back is a much better poser. Lexus is still doing the kind of the wider arm thing, which has kind of gone out for the last couple years. So I would say, and that's always going to be something that hurts her, is her posing is just a little bit off. That front pose is actually pretty spot on right now. I think her front pose is pretty good. She is opening up a lot on her lats, so I'd say be careful with that. You don't want to overpower everyone on stage. It's good to be kind of right in the middle. You don't want to be, show your lats and be so much better than everyone. If you're so much better than everyone on stage, usually it's too much. You can be a little better than everyone, just right there, be the best one. But you don't want to be so much better where it's extreme and then you become, her lats are too big for bikini, right? That's because you're talking about comparisons. That's how bikini works. It's comparison based on who shows up. Now, looking at the back pose, I think that she's still opening up just a little bit too much. India has a very modern pose, nice close elbows, which is what they want to see right now. Her stance is actually really close too. I think on both of their posing from the back, on how they're posing the glutes and hamstrings and their feet width is both fine and acceptable for both of them. The only thing I would say on Lexus is that her arms are just a little bit too wide. And I think that's because she likes to accentuate her V-taper, but she already has such a dramatic, better V-taper than everyone there that she really doesn't need to do that. And when you look at India, she has got a good V-taper. She's got decent V-taper, but it's just nothing in comparison to Lexus's. The waist to shoulder ratio is just so much better with Lexus. So looking at India from the back, India is really, really good from the glutes. Her glutes are crazy, crazy good. They're about as far as they can go in bikini before they start edging on the side of being wellness. And she is very compact and very round and very bubbly, and she does border on the side of being a little bit wellnessy in those glutes because they are very powerful glutes. Probably overpower her physique just a little bit, and it's because of how round they are and how low her tie-ins are. Look at where her tie-ins are on her glutes. Her tie-ins are pretty much at halfway down her femur. I mean, they are way down there. When you look at the comparison of Lexus and you look at where her kneecap is, right? Look at that difference. When you look at India versus where her kneecap is, we're talking about a lot less space of coverage. So when you get glutes that are big with tie-ins that are that deep, you're going to have a body that looks like the glutes are a little bit overpowering. It's hard to get away from that, especially with how full they have to be these days. So that's something that hurts her a little bit genetically with her overall structure because of that compact nature and her kind of more straight up and down torso, which, in the past, when bikini was more straight up and down, you didn't need to be so extreme on the hourglass. It really helped. And nowadays, because it's more hourglass and more extreme, it's hurting her a little bit. And I think that's where the fence that she's going to have to climb to get past to keep being a top level bikini pro and get to the Olympia again and actually be a threat at the Olympia is where she's going to have to get past, which is going to be hard to do based on her structure. Now, looking at her from the back, there's really not much she needs to do. Her conditioning is there. Her muscle is there. Her posing is there. You're looking at her hamstrings and the detail and separation lines are not crazy. They're where they need to be. When you look at Lexus, though, you see how her hamstring is really, really full and there's no separation line of detail going down the middle of the hamstring. And if you look at India's, she has a separation line going down the middle of the hamstring, and she has a separation line on this hamstring as well. And that just comes with developing your hamstrings over long periods of time, how you're genetically made. But someone who's going to have round, bubbly hamstrings without the separation is always going to have a favorable look in the judge's eye versus someone who has that vertical striation line in the hamstrings because they're going to say, oh, their hamstrings are a little bit too detailed. We don't want them to be that detailed. So a couple of things she's going to have to get past for that. But I do think the judges got this right. I think Lexus knocks it out of the park here. I do think Lexus can be a little better from the back. I still think that she can get her glute tie-in to be a little bit better than that. I think just a tiny bit more development would do that. I don't think she needs to be more conditioned, but I think more glute development. And by the time the Olympia comes around, she might be able to be perfect by then and maybe move into that top 10. And next up, we have Jordan Fisher, and we have Jordan Fisher versus Jordan Fisher here. How did she go from first place to sixth place just a couple weeks later at a similar level show? I looked at the pictures. I looked at the side-by-sides. There's not a big difference between the two physiques. So looking at her overall physique, I was like, a lot of times what happens is someone gets to they qualify for the Olympia. They already committed to doing the other show. They sign the contracts and they're like, oh, hey, I'm already in the Olympia. They kind of take their foot off the gas and they go into the next show being 90% ready, even because they're already there. They just want to have a good showing. It's harder to be motivated, right? And I was like, okay, well, maybe she's just not as motivated because she already got to Olympia. No big deal. It happens, But that wasn't the case. I was looking at the pictures, looking at the side-by-sides. Very, very similar physique. I mean, almost identical. So, looking at the side-by-sides, I don't think that there's anything really different between the two. It's just the level of competition that was there. She beat Lexus earlier. I think that Lexus just really showed up, nailed her conditioning, nailed her posing, and brought a good package that just made her unbeatable that day, which I've been saying for a long time. When she nails it, she's going to be unbeatable. And it just shows you that she's doing it. I still think she still needs to develop a little bit more, but I think that she's going to be really, really hard to contend with even at the higher levels once she brings that package to a higher level show. I wanted to bring up Jordan because in bikini, we don't talk about enough like the mental toughness that you need in bikini, because you can go from one show to the next show looking pretty much exactly the same. She might have been a little fuller at the last show, but not anything significant to be slipping 6 places to girls that you've beaten prior, right? She's a little bit, maybe a tiny bit different between the two. But the thing is, that's bikini. Bikini is a very volatile sport. One day you're going to be king of the mountain, and then the next day you're going to be, 10th place. It's going to happen, and you're going to need to be tough in bikini. You need to understand that you're choosing to do the most subjective division, and you need to be mentally tough, and this goes for pretty much everyone. You can look at high-level competitors this happens to. When you look at the year Jennifer Dory, when she won her Olympia show. I told this to people as like a motivational thing because it's a really good story. Jennifer Dory, the year she won the Olympia was the first year she won a pro show. She's competed at the Olympia like 2 times before that and still never won a pro show, right? So how does someone that good, the actual best in the absolute sport, has all these fluctuations too? It's because bikini itself, it's not because she had crazy fluctuations. Yeah, she fluctuated from show to show here and there, but it wasn't anything dramatic. But it's because bikini itself is so subjective. Sometimes the things are going to be dependent on who shows up to the show. If 20 soft girls show up and you show up hard, well, guess what? You're hard that day. If 20 hard girls show up and you're a little bit soft, even though that softness won you the show before, guess what? You look out of place, you look soft that day, right? Bikini has that subjectiveness to it, where a lot of different things can be variables. It's not like bodybuilding. So I say this because, if you're going to do bikini, you're going to need to be tough. You're going to need to understand there's going to be huge swings, especially if you're just getting started in it and the judges kind of don't know what your base is. You're going to have huge swings because if you look at, let's say, it's almost a disadvantage if you do a lot of shows. If you look at Ashley, for example, she does so many shows that the judges know what her best is. So when she sometimes gets compared to herself, which is, kind of sucks because the judges know what her best is. They know what she's going to be off because she does so many shows. So that's the only disadvantage of competing so often is that judges are familiar with the physique and they know what they're looking to see, right? But when you're talking about regular bikini and you're just getting started, they don't know what your base is. So they're kind of comparing it based on who shows up around you. So there's going to be a lot of fluctuations. You need to understand that in bikini, and you're just going to need to be tough, brush it off and move on to the next, just like Lexus did and came back and won a show. So congrats to Lexus on that one too. Big fan of her. She was from Vegas, and I'm happy to see her at the Olympia again. And to Jordan, you're still awesome. Take this one, go to the next, win the next one, because that's what's going to happen in bikini. It's going to happen many, many more times. If you do 20 shows, maybe you'll win 5 of them, and 15 of them, maybe you'll do in the top 5, or 10 of them, maybe you'll do in the top 5, and 5 of them, you're going to be 10th place. It is what it is. That's bikini. There's huge fluctuations in the most subjective division. Now moving on to our breakout star of the week. Is this going to be a weekly thing, breakout star of the week? I guess it can't be a weekly thing because there's not always a breakout star. But our breakout star, let's call it of July, is going to be Michelle Billett. Michelle, I saw her backstage and I was like, this girl's going to be trouble today. I don't know who she is, but man, she is damn good, right? And so when you get to this upper level, your structure and your muscle bellies are such a big factor in how well you're going to do. Looking at her backstage, I saw her pumping. She was like right next to me, and I was watching her pump, and she was just a little bit too tight though. I was like, okay, if this girl shows up in shape, like filled out 100%, she will be a real threat. So, but structurally, the way that her muscles flow, her shoulder to waist ratio, her glute tie-ins, the muscle bellies are round and full. Everything was there. The complexion was good. The beauty flow was great. I was looking at her, I was like, this girl is trouble, and it's one of those girls that I don't know that can go and ruin the whole day type of thing. And those are the more scary ones. The girls that I know that are, if I'm at a show with like a competitor that's like beaten, these girls 8 times, 10 times, whatever, I'm not really worried about, even if they're a big name, because I'm like, I know how this goes. But when you get these new ones that are just have a ton of potential, those are the scary ones. You're like, oh, this is going to be the next breakout star? This is going to be the Daraja in her first show, the Lexus in her first show that wins, right? Sometimes it happens is just someone with no name just comes in and just steals the whole show. And it's like, whoa, who is this girl? I saw her backstage. I thought she had potential of that until I started seeing her pump. When I saw her pump, I started seeing all this grain in her muscle, overly conditioned glutes, overly conditioned hamstrings, all these little things that you really can't see so much in the pictures, but you could see it when she was kind of walking around backstage and pumping. And I was like, you know what? When she's standing there, she doesn't look over-conditioned. But when she's moving around and when she walks from the back of the stage to the front of the stage, you could see that deep detail in the quads, that deep striations. I was like, okay, that's going to hurt her, especially because Sandy was a judge there, and Sandy will pick that up right there. There's some judges that are just, you can just count on them to pick up the things that you see. And Sandy, Tyler, Tamer, Tarek, you could see that they're going to be like, oh, they're going to pick that right up. She's just too overly detailed. They're going to pick that right up. Something strange happened at this show, but it is, I will say with her, it's strange because when she's standing there, it doesn't look that way. It's when she's moving, it looks that way. So she came out, and I was like, she still might be in the first call out because her structure is so good. But then she ended up in the second call out, and I was like, okay, yeah, makes sense. She's overly conditioned. Why'd she be in the second call out, right? So she was second call out. But then I think what happened was she came out, Sandy saw her legs being too detailed, saw her and just saw, it's obvious when she's walking, the lights are hitting and you're getting quad striations in that walk in your individual pose. And then when she was getting compared front and back, I think Sandy was like, oh, maybe she's a little tight, but she's still probably one of the better girls here. And she worked her way from probably 7th or 8th place on the outside of second call out. So maybe even like 10th place at one point, worked her way all the way up. Right. And then they did a top comparison. They did a call back, and then they threw her in a callback of positions. I think it was 5 through like 10. They moved her towards the middle, and then they kept her out there, and they moved her back in with the callback of positions like 1 through 5, and then they moved her in. I was like, this is crazy. This girl's working her way up the ladder by like 5 spots in one show. And it makes sense because when she's standing there, her conditioning doesn't look like it's too much. And it actually, so I could see how a judge would argue with herself about, man, I know she's too tight, but she's not too tight, kind of, with her standing there. So it's a really kind of a strange thing that you don't see too often. So how is she going to balance that? One, I think she can show up a lot fuller. I think that she just needs to eat a little bit more in this prep. I think she comes in a little fuller, and she's going to kill it. And she's going to be doing this next show, the Governor's Cup next weekend. And I think that she is going to absolutely crush it because all she needs to do is fill out her frame a little bit more and not have so much detail when she walks, and she's going to crush it. Her posing's pretty good. I think she does need to work on a couple of things. Her stage IQ is not there yet. Her posing is a little bit off. I think her presentation is a little bit off. I don't like her suit color as well. I think that her overall look can be improved. These little tiny things, but literally I can fix that in 20 minutes. And if she gets with the right posing coach and the right people, she can fix her posing, fix all these little things and and fill out a little bit. She'll be a star within, one show, literally like an hour. So, I think that she is, I've had some other people that I've talked about as being like a breakout star before, but this is one I really think is going to be a breakout star. I don't see a way, if she makes those improvements, that she doesn't get to the Olympia this year if she competes at least 5 times. So real high hopes for her. I think that she's a ton of potential, a real threat. Honestly, that's someone that could be a real threat to an Olympia, right? I think that she could actually, because there's a thing in bikini, you have to have structural potential. And I know that sucks to hear, but it is what it is. You have to have round muscle bellies. You have to have the structure. You have to have the bones to be good as a bikini competitor. Once you get to those upper levels, you might be able to get away with it at a local level. At a national level, you need a pretty good structure. At a pro level, you need a crazy good structure. And at the Olympia, you need like one of the best structures in the world, right? And she has one of those types of structures, one of those types of muscle bellies. But there's a lot of rookie things she's doing wrong that's keeping her from going to that next level right now. Hopefully, she'll fix them. She's going to get some judges' feedback. And then when she gets that, hopefully she applies it. She starts studying it a little bit more. There's a lot of little things she can do to make this a huge improvement right away. And I hope to see that she does that because I think that she's just, and I talked to her a little backstage. She's a cool girl. I'm always hoping for these people to like reach their full potential. I think right now she's like at 80% of her full potential. That's how many mistakes she's making. But watch out for her. Crazy good structure. Let's move on to Maya Estavi. So Maya Estavi got second place at the Mile High. And she came into the Patriots challenge. And I thought when I first saw the list, okay, it's going to be between probably Ashley and Maya because, she got second place at the Mile High. And the thing about Maya doing the Mile High is she was a little bit off in her conditioning. I thought she could have been a little bit improved. And I know that she was going to be bringing better conditioning to the Patriots. Why would you go against someone who just beat you if you're not bringing a better package? That wouldn't make any sense, right? It's not logical. So the logical conclusion is she's going to be better. Otherwise, she would have chose to do a different show, and especially because she knew Ashley's from Vegas and was going to be doing the Las Vegas show. She was on the list. So, and everyone knew she was going to be doing the Vegas show. So one, hats off to her for going after the challenge. A lot of people would go away from that challenge and go to another show. You see that a lot of times when you see like a top 10 bikini Olympian announce they're going to be doing a show. If there's another show that weekend, that show has like double the amount of people in it versus the top 10er. So you got to give her credit for saying, hey, I'm going to improve. And I think I can beat her. I can challenge her. That's cool. I think that that's an awesome thing. Those are the gamers. Those are the people that aren't complaining about Ashley doing too many shows. And they're like, no, to be the best, you got to beat the best. I'm up for the challenge. So hats off to you, Maya, for that. Now, knowing that going into the show, I was like, okay, this is probably going to be the challenge. This is the scenario. And that always goes into my mind and how we're going to, bring Ashley in or bring a competitor in based on who I think is going to be in that top spot. So how we're going to compare next to them, that's always part of it. Now, looking at Maya, when she showed up, I was looking at everyone. That's kind of what happens when the glaze time comes backstage, and I'm there, and I'm like, okay, who's the threats here? I saw Maya, and I was like, oh, she's way too hard. Like, she's way too hard. Not the threat here. Who's the threat here, right? So I started looking at her. I looked at Ariel. Ariel was just a hair soft this weekend. Then I saw Michelle, and I was like, okay, that's a little bit of a problem, but she's a little hard. Who's the real threat here, right? And so we're going to go into who the threat was and compare her next to Ashley. But Maya, when I saw her, she was just overly hard. She was just way too hard. And if you look at her overall conditioning, and this doesn't even really show it, these pictures really don't do it justice, but you could see even here, there's a lot of deep grain like in her glutes. Like she had fully striated glutes. Like when she was sitting down, you could see full striations in her glutes. When she walked, full striations. When she transitioned, full flickering of striations. You could see here the hamstrings are crazy tight. That's paper thin skin on those hamstrings. The adductors, they're fully separated. I mean, this is some high level conditioning. So hats off to her for being able to get to that level of conditioning, but it's way too much. This is something that should have been stopped, 10 days prior to this. Looking at her overall quads, the detail and striations, I mean, it is way too much. And so this is what happens. A lot of times people get to this level of conditioning and they're like, oh, I was eating so many carbs though this week. And I'm like, well, you should have been doing that like 10 days ago, not this week. That should have been a 10-day thing. Now, I will say what does happen sometimes in Vegas though, if you're here for too long, you can start drying out. So she was already probably really lean. Maybe she started drying out a little bit more because the humidity in Vegas, because that does happen, especially if you're here for like a week, it happens a lot more than if you're here than just for like a day or two. So it doesn't happen as often because it's usually a day or two. They're here for a day or two before the show, not a week. But if you're here for a longer period of time, it generally happens, especially if you're coming from like an area where there's high humidity to here where it's a desert and it's super dry. So maybe she was already tight. She dried out even more and she just couldn't catch up. I don't know. But here's the thing. You have Maya going to the Governor's Cup who needs to fill out a little bit more. You have Michelle going to the Governor's Cup who needs to fill out a little bit more. You have Ariel who's going to the Governor's Cup who needed to tighten up a little bit. You have some serious threats going to that Governor's Cup next weekend. Krista Bellina is going to be doing that show. How is she going to fare with how much muscle she has in front of different judges, right? So that is going to be a real throwdown because there's a lot of scenarios going to that show that really makes it an exciting show. And then we go down to the battle for number one, Ashley versus Ashley. And how did this end up happening? I got a lot of people sending me pictures of Ashley Hampton saying, man, she's really muscular. She has huge quads. She's really developed, really dense and lean. I mean, is that what they're going for the number 2 spot, whatever? Well, remember the scenario of this show, okay? I definitely don't think that it was bad judging by any means because I got this picture sent to me quite a bit because of how muscular Ashley Hampton is. Remember the scenario. The girls you had to pick from were all crazy tight. So you had Maya, who was way too tight. You had Ariel, who was a little bit soft. You had Mia, who needed to fill out because it was a little bit soft. You had Hazel, who was just too small. You had Michelle, who was just too tight, right? And then when you get into all those scenarios of your top people, and then you have Ashley Hampton, who's a little bit too muscular, who do you pick, right? Do you pick the girl who's too hard? Do you pick the girl who's too soft? Do you pick the girl who's too muscular? Do you pick the girl who's not enough muscle? Because everyone's a little bit off besides Ashley Caldwell, right? So because everyone's a little bit off, I might err on the side of this as well. I think that that's a fair call because in terms of ratios and proportion, she was the best one there out of the other girls in that scenario, even though her quads were too detailed, too muscular, too dense. Because that was one thing, everyone else had a lot more with them. And even some of them were a lot tighter, even though she was pretty tight. From the back, she's not too tight and not too much. From the front, her quads are too dense. They're vascular. They're striated. The pictures here at this show makes everyone look a little bit softer. Like Maya, for example, like she's way harder than she looked in those pictures. Michelle, a little bit harder than she looked in those pictures. The lighting's really flat there because they have the main lights on you and then they have the auditorium lights on, and it's just a very bouncy light. There's light walls in that place in the Lexus Park, so it makes you a little bit softer on that stage. Every lighting is going to be different. That one is just a little bit softer lighting. Some places have harder lighting, softer lighting. Just for you guys that are watching this, that are doing USAs, understand that you probably want to err on the side of conditioning because the lighting is going to be like that at a Lexus Park. This is the lighting at a Lexus Park where USAs will be, and that's always something good to know as a coach. What's the lighting going to be like there? So, a lot of times we don't know, but when you do know, there's something you can kind of plan for. Now, looking at Ashley Hampton, she beats herself, And this is one of those things. If you were to put her pictures next to Ashley and say, who has a better physique, you would say Ashley Hampton because she has a bigger physique. She has a more muscular physique. She's got a denser physique. She's got a more conditioned physique. So when you look at it side by side, and this is one of the tests that Sandy does at like these seminars that she does, she says, who has a better physique, right? And then everyone always says, oh, this girl on the right, who's like more muscular, too muscular for bikini, too lean for bikini. It's like, yes, but she doesn't win bikini. Just because the physique is better doesn't mean it's better for the division, right? So this is the criteria. Ashley's the criteria. Caldwell Hampton is just a little bit past that point. So when you're seeing her walk and you're seeing her on stage, her legs are just a little too dense. You're seeing vascularity on her quads. You're seeing separation and detail. And that's where she loses. She kind of beats herself. So my advice to her would be, hey, stay off legs for like a couple months. Honestly, you probably can stay away from doing your quads and hamstrings for probably 2 months. Lose some density in there. Even when you're doing your cardio, probably not even doing the stair mill, do just something like the treadmill. Work off your legs a little bit. Keep your glutes where they're at. Keep pumping those glutes. Keep them going because your glutes are awesome, but your quads are overpowering everyone. So that's where she loses. She beats herself in that scenario. And I think she definitely has amazing lines and she can get to the Olympia. I don't think there's going to be any issue with that, but she needs to bring down those quads and needs to change that conditioning on her lower body, not being so tight on those quads, especially because of how muscular they are, and especially because she has vascularity in her quads that makes them look even more tight. So that's going to be the only thing that she needs to fix. And they are a little bit overpowering to her upper body. They are a little bit out of balance. They're a little bit out of balance. Now, Michelle was actually battling Ashley Hampton for second place. Not sure if Michelle even knows this, but it was a close comparison between the two. They weren't comparing Ashley Caldwell to Ashley Hampton at the end. They were actually comparing Ashley Hampton to Michelle for second place. Isn't that crazy? Because she started off like 10th place. So remember, girls, just because you get a second call out, don't give up. Keep posing hard. Keep trying to work your way up because it does happen. She almost got second place. There was a lot of arguments going back and forth I wouldn't say arguments, but discussion with the judges going back and forth. Should we put her in second place because she fits the lines of bikini more and her structure is so good? Had she been in a fuller conditioning, I think 100% she would have beaten Ashley Hampton that day because her structurally and bikini muscle, she had her beat. So, shout out to her on that. Now, let's go ahead and go into Bikini Queen Ashley Caldwell winning her 40th pro show. So how does she keep doing it and why does she keep doing it? What is it about Ashley Caldwell that makes her the safe pick? And it's a whole bunch of things, So looking at her overall look for this year, what I will say, and this is something, and I always want to be unbiased, even though, obviously, Ashley's like my sister and I'm her coach and she's one of my best friends. I always want to be unbiased and give you guys real feedback and real analysis of it. And if I didn't have that relationship with Ashley, I would still be saying, there's not much to improve on. And this is the feedback that we're getting from judges now. Now, a couple years ago, we were getting, you need shoulders, you need shoulders, you need shoulders. We haven't heard that one time this year. The judges have not said, you need more shoulders. They said, you've done a great job with your upper body. Make sure you keep your balance right. Make sure your upper body doesn't get too big and gets past your lower body, right? We're starting to hear that now. They're saying, hey, just keep it there. Make sure you don't focus on it too much where it gets past your lower body, right? Which is crazy to think about, right? Before we were saying 2018, they were saying, Ashley, your upper body needs to match your lower body. Your lower body is dominant to your upper body, and you need way more shoulders, right? 2020, you need more shoulders. 2023, okay, be careful. Don't get your shoulders too big, right? Don't get too much bigger because then you're going to throw off your bikini lines and you're going to throw off your balance of your upper to lower body. You want to keep you perfectly balanced, right? Crazy how that works. And what's crazy is that she's doing it while staying lean, and that's the probably the thing that I love the most about Ashley's journey is that she's proving to everyone, because my method is keep them lean, have easy preps, do low cardio, keep your calories relatively, realistic for bikini these days. But you earn that in the off season by having a quality off season and not putting on, 30, 35 pounds that you see some bikini pros doing. We're talking, Ashley's staying very close within her stage weight. I like to keep people about 10 to 12% within their stage weight, depending on how long they have in between shows. And then they have easy preps. They look healthy. They look full. They can compete often. We're not losing a lot of muscle. And we're not losing a lot of clients because the prep is too hard, where they're quitting their preps because it's way too hard, right? That's the benefit of a good offseason. Now, the argument of a good offseason for everyone out there has been like, well, you can't build muscle if you're staying that lean. Well, Ashley has been building muscle for 5 years doing it that way. She's proven to all of you. The judges are now saying don't get any bigger, right? Which is a crazy thing to think about with petite Ashley. So the cool thing about Ashley is that, she's showing you can compete often. She's showing you can do it healthy. She's showing that you can stay lean in the offseason and love your body year round and do it in a very healthy way, which is going to pay dividends for her, and why is going to be why her career is going to go longer than most too. If you see people having to struggle with their diets like crazy because they gain too much weight, if you see, year after year, they're going to have a very long time of competing as a career, because not only is it going to be hard for them to diet for that long, but their skin is not going to stay as tight. They're not going to have that same fresh look every time. There's going to be huge variations of the physique they bring to the stage versus Ashley. If she has to lose 6 pounds for the Olympia, there's not going to be a huge fluctuation in that. You got to lose 6 pounds. You're not going to lose a ton of muscle losing 6 pounds for the Olympia, things like that. So that's one of the things I really love about her. Now, why does she keep doing so good? Well, let's look at those hamstrings. Roundness of her hamstrings without separation of the hamstrings, like we talked about with Lexus. Round hamstrings without separation. Full tie-ins without overly detailed etched tie-ins. Now, she gets close, right, but not going past the point. And also remember, the lighting here makes everyone a little bit softer. This is the fullest that Ashley's been. We've been really playing with the carbs and taking some more risks with overall fullness with Ashley. We know that if she's going to have a chance at winning the Olympia, we're going to have to bring her in a little fuller, and you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of conditioning when you're going for that overall full look. So this is a little bit of a gamble on our end. Me, I'm a risk taker. I'm 100% for taking risks. Even if, this meant her filling out, meant her getting 5th place, but we tried something new and we saw where we were at. We saw if the judges didn't like it or not. This is the time to do it. Not the Olympia, but this is the time to take on new challenges like this. And I'm happy that she's game for it. So she's grown in that way where she's willing to take more risk too. But look at her overall shoulder fullness. Look at that overall width, her shoulder to waist ratio. She has, again, an hourglass shape without an X frame. And that's what we talked about with Lexus. Lexus is a lot more of a sharper line on those upper lats, right? That kind of falls into more of the X frame versus the hourglass shape. They want to have the hourglass shape. So that's why I'd say when I'm looking at Lexus, be careful with how big your lats get. Be careful with how much you push in that front pose, because you're going to kind of push past these lines of that hourglass shape, which is the true bikini goal. Look at that front glute profile. Who has a glute front profile like that? There's very few people. I think that there's probably 3 of the top 10 Olympians have a glute front profile that's similar in that front pose. A lot of them don't have that roundness to it. She has great roundness to her overall hamstring. She's got good fullness to her quads without separation. Her detail is great. Now, the thing about her is, if she's going to win the Olympia again, all she needs to do is bring this package with a little bit tighter conditioning. I will say that I think her conditioning could have been a little bit better at this one, but we shot for the side of fullness. That's my error. I think that we could have been a tiny bit tighter on that. I could have seen it maybe a couple days earlier, but it was good enough for this one. I think that we're very close to finding that perfect balanced conditioning line, and we're going to try to hit it this weekend in Vancouver. I think she's already improved from Patriots now, where she's a tiny bit tighter, and now she's mastering that fullness again and bringing her in a little bit fuller without bringing her in over the top where she gets a little bit spilled. But again, this could have been lights too. I do think that she maybe just a hair tighter, maybe 1 pound, and would have been like the perfect Ashley that we'd like to bring her in for the Olympia. So is she going to be able to bring an Olympia package in like that? I hope so. We have to make sure there's a lot of variables that are going to count for that. Just if the body's responding, the time, the mood, the energy, all these different factors, how the metabolism's working. Is she going to be able to bring a package that's perfect for the Olympia? I'm definitely going to try. I know she's definitely going to try, and I think that we have a really good shot at it, and I think this puts her right back in that limelight of being potential of winning that Olympia. She's been third 2 years in a row. I think that she's got a chance to move up this year with how things are laying out and how her momentum's going. So let's see what the year brings. Anyway, with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe on this video. It helps out the algorithm. TeamElitePhysique.com for worldwide online contest prep with me. I'll talk to you guys next week.